Why is there so much slander about dudes wearing black Air Force Ones?
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today we're going to be looking through the Eastern Conference and looking at players who could be potential breakout candidates for this upcoming 2019-20 NBA season. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Now, when I talk breakout, I'm not looking at guys who are going to smash their ADP or anything like that. It's just guys who are looking to have a better season or one of their best seasons, or probably the best season they've ever had in their career. Sometimes ADP and rank catches up to that. Sometimes it doesn't. And those two things may be related. Those two things may not. But we're looking at guys who are looking to take a big step forward, who are in better opportunities. Basically, the inverse of the podcast that we did last week, where we looked at players through each conference who are in a worse situation. These are players who are in a better situation. There are a couple of teams, one team in the East in particular, Philadelphia 76ers. I didn't really see anyone who fit this category. I could have gone with someone like Zaire Smith in a better situation than last year because he's not injured, but that's not really making that much of a difference. Everyone else, I think, is in a equal, if not worse situation than where they were before. You know, Simmons and Embiid probably the same spot. Harris maybe marginally better than the end of last season, but by far from the best situation of his career. Horford, Richardson, similar story. So in the Western Conference, there's a couple of teams like that as well. But enough of me wobbling on about talking about teams that I'm not going to be talking about in this podcast. Let's talk about the teams that I will be talking about. Let's start with the Milwaukee Bucks, and this one was actually a little bit of a struggle to begin with, but I think it's important to mention Donte DiVincenzo, who we didn't see much of last season, but Mike Budenholzer really loves this guy. He had this bilateral heel problems last season. Now, he was in the rotation from opening night. Now, if we're going to be fair, he was shit. Like, he did not shoot the ball well. He came in with a reputation of being a shooter. And didn't shoot the ball well. But Coach Bud, Mike Budenholzer, he loves DiVincenzo. There's an opening there with Brogdon obviously gone. Wes Matthews takes the starting job. But that backup spot with George Hill taking one of them, it could be Sterling Brown. Tony Snell has gone as well. The prevailing wisdom at this point seems to be that DiVincenzo is going to have an opportunity to take that role. Hopefully he shoots better than 27% from three. And this is really only for deeper leagues, but he's someone who's going to be way down the ranking list. And for deeper leagues, if someone's an every night rotation player who maybe can come in and hit over a 3 per game, then DiVincenzo could be that option. But of course, that is just for deeper league scenarios. Let's look at the Chicago Bulls now. Wendell Carter Jr. is my guy. I'm a little weary with, not weary, I'm more wary with, I'm not tired of him, with Wendell Carter because of how Boylen mismanaged him last season. Really reduced his confidence, stopped him getting touches, refused to let him shoot threes. But hopefully Boylen has mellowed out, no way, changed his offensive philosophy a little bit, and we're going to get a season of big minutes from Carter. Now, he was still a top 120 player last season in only 25 minutes per game. That number, both of those numbers, they're both set to skyrocket this season. More minutes, a better rank as well. I think he's got a real chance to be a top 70 player, play 30 plus minutes, be like a 14-9 guy. He could block some shots. Hopefully he hits his threes better than 18%, which is where he was last season. I'm pretty confident that he will. Good free throw shooter, really solid mid to late round roto guy. I think this is going to be a big step forward for Wendell Carter, and I still maintain I think he can be a top 25 player in the NBA at some point in the next couple of seasons. Probably year 4 or 5 is where we're looking at that. Maybe it's year 6. Not this year, but this should be the season that Wendell Carter Jr. establishes himself as a fantasy force, and it will only start to get better from this season. So he's a guy to watch who can really do it all. Just think of him as like a more advanced, I think he's going to be a more advanced Bam Adebayo, a guy that can contribute right across the board, but he can do it, I think, in bigger volume and bigger areas there, and overall will end up exceeding Bam in a couple of years' time. But that's the sort of player he is. Maybe a Marcus Gasol-ish type of fantasy contributor. Someone, again, who contributes right across the board. Maybe not the same level of assists that Gasol did have through his prime, or even last season where he was dishing assists left, right, and center. Let's look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. a breakout candidate here. I don't like to go with second-year guys, and in saying that, the first three players that I've gone with have all been second-year players. But it does bring up an important point. Now, people throw out narratives all the time, and I hate it. This is a revenge game where one guy will have a good game against his former team, four of them won't, but it's always revenge game. That's what's going to do it. There's so many of those situations that go around. Contract year narratives. He's in a contract year. He's going to have a big season. Well, maybe not. The same as any other player could have a big year or not. And another one of those, there's two other ones of those that I am pretty annoyed or get annoyed about because they do just have a prevailing thought. The rookie wall is one of them. Players, man, they're going to get bad at the end of the season, the rookie wall. Whereas in reality, the majority of rookies get better as the season goes on. And the second one of those is sophomore slump. Whenever someone doesn't take a big step forward, like Donovan Mitchell or Jason Tatum, they had the sophomore slump. Where in reality, development is never linear. Players aren't expected to get better every season, and the majority of players do get significantly better in their second season. So when you hear those things thrown out, sophomore slump and rookie wall and contract year, it applies to some people, but it's not an overwhelming thing where you can just go, well, this is what's going to happen to people, because in reality, the vast majority of people go the opposite direction. And that's what I think is going to happen here with Sexton. Now, he put up some big numbers at the end of last season. He was the only one really on the Cavs doing anything. He was scoring 20 points per night. His three-point shooting was excellent all season. Of course, there's absolutely no rebounds, assists, steals, or blocks. Low volume of threes as well. And the return of Kevin Love this season, the addition of Darius Garland, means that what I think he did at the end of last season isn't necessarily replicable, but I think he can be 85 to 90, 85% of what he did at the end of last season for an entirety of the season, which would be bloody good because he was bad to begin last season. So I think Sexton can at least get close to 20 points per game, hit some threes, and then the other categories are going to be a struggle. But he is a good free throw shooter. He's strong for points leagues as well. So I think that we're going to see some pretty... I don't believe in him as a long-term piece of the future or anything like that. I don't think he's really all that good of a player, but he is in an opportunity to put up some pretty good fantasy numbers, and I think it is going to be an interesting breakout type campaign for big Padawan Colin Sexton. If you are a fantasy football player, make sure you are checking out the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast with Vinny Iyer. You can find it wherever you find any of your podcasts, so go follow along and make sure you dominate your league that way. All right, let's look at the Boston Celtics. It was hard to find someone who I thought would have a breakout. I think Gordon Hayward is going to have a big bounce back this season. I think in the late rounds of drafts, Hayward is going to be an interesting guy. Now, will I ever think he'll go back to being the guy he was in Utah? No, I don't think this is a guy who was putting up 30 usage, 20 plus points per game. But I think he's going to be significantly better 18 or 2 years removed from that horrible leg injury. But I wouldn't call that a breakout necessarily. Is Jason Tatum going to take a big step forward? I'm not sure that he will. Kemba Walker, he's not going to take a big step forward. The guy I'm looking at here is Jaylen Brown, and I'm not all that confident with it. I don't really like Jaylen that much as a fantasy prospect. I think he gets overvalued significantly in the NBA, but he is pretty good at what he does. Now, he's got to be able to add numerous things. Now, if he can go from a 65% free throw shooter to a 75%, it's a big leap. But if he can go for that, then yes, he does become a top 100 guy, a 16 point per game player, 5 rebounds, over a steal. The problem is he gets no assists, he doesn't block shots, he's a low volume 3-point shooter. So his overall fantasy value is not good, but this is his 4th season. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these things, take a big step forward. Most importantly, that free throw percentage, because if that changes, then he does push or knock on the door of being a top 100 guy. And in a punt free throw setting, he probably already is there. I think we're going to see more minutes from Jaylen Brown this season than what we saw last year, where he played 25 minutes a night. I don't know whether he's going to come off the bench. I don't know whether he's going to start. My inclination, the inclination I have is he will come off the bench, but most people surrounding the Celtics think that he will go back into the starting lineup and Marcus Smart will come off the bench. Regardless, I think his minutes are going up either way. It doesn't matter where he's starting the game, whether it's in a tracksuit or on the court. So I think there is going to be some improvement there from Jaylen Brown, and we'll get to see some of these other areas of his game maybe start to take off. The interesting one will be the passing. He does struggle in that area. He struggles with vision, but if that can start to develop, then there is a clear path for him to break out and become a much better player than what he's been in the past. Let's look at the Atlanta Hawks. This one's pretty easy. I think he is absolutely in line for discussion for most improved player for this year, and that is, of course, the Baptist, John Collins. Collins is the starting power forward. He's going to play minutes at center. He is going to get a lot of minutes. He didn't play all that much last year. An ankle injury slowed him down to begin the season. He missed the beginning of the year, started the season on the 17th of November, so missed the first month of the season. ended up the year as the 51st ranked player on a per game basis in just 30 minutes a night, averaging 20 and 10. That is pretty bloody impressive. The thing that, of course, everyone looks at, and I've talked about this on plenty of podcasts before, no blocks and no steals. And that is true. 0.4 steals is bad. 0.6 blocks is bad. But we also saw that being a massive decrease from what he did the year before. In fact, his steal and block rate were both cut in half from his rookie season, and it was completely unsustainably bad. He had one steal in the entire 2018 portion of the season, which was about 30 games that he played. One steal. That sort of thing is just not something that's going to continue. I imagine the steal and block numbers return. He should be a 20 plus per game scorer, an 11 rebound guy. 0.7-ish blocks, 0.7-ish steals, a block a game, really strong percentages which started to come up, and he hit 80% of his free throws over the final 35 games of last season. I see John Collins as, if you get the Baptist in the third round, it is a steal in the third round. I think that he is absolutely pushing into that second round discussion. He's got an ADP on Fantrax of 45, a rank on Yahoo of 29. Both of those things, I think, especially that Fantrax one, is way too low. The Yahoo one's pushing close. ESPN, interestingly, has bumped his rank to number 17, which is aggressive. It's not that crazy, though. I think that he's going to be a second round and maybe a top 20 player when all is said and done, and going to be a significant candidate for the most improved player this season. The Baptist, John Collins, looking at one of your absolute elite breakout candidates for this season. Let's go to the Miami Heat now. I think we all know who this one is going to be.
Bam, 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 bam.
Yes, Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat. He is the unquestioned starting center now in Miami. Myers Leonard is his backup. Hassan Whiteside is in Portland. Bam should be getting 30-plus minutes a night. He should be averaging a double-double. He should get you a steal, over a block per game, and provide excellent percentages. A great roto player. Probably not quite as good of a head-to-head guy, but this is a guy who over the final 16 games of last season was a top 60 player in only 27 minutes a night. Expect that to go way up, and he should be a top 50 guy this season, and perhaps go further than that. At the moment, he's ranked just ludicrously on ESPN, 134th, 64th on Yahoo, 64th on Fantrax. All of those numbers are way too low. He should be pushing up significantly. He's 22. He can pass, he can score, he can defend, he can get steals, he can shoot a bit. He can finish at an efficient rate. The three-point shooting needs to come along. Bam is another guy like Collins, who I think we should be looking at as definite most improved candidates. Locked in, starter, big minutes, good production. Really, really like him for this season. I think he's going to be a guy that if somehow you're on ESPN, he's going at 120, which again is bananas. And if you're playing with anyone, and if you're playing in a league, right, where you can get Bam Adebayo at 120, please tell all those people in that league to listen to this podcast. What fun is it beating up on people who actually have no idea what they're doing? Get them all to listen to the show, get them to watch it on YouTube. Just go search Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube, find the show, and download it. Because don't you want to beat the best? You don't want to play against scrubs who don't know their thumb from their asshole. Like, you have to be able to play against better people. So if you're getting Bam at 120, then the other 11 people in your league, I'm not really sure they know what they're doing. But anyway, Bam Adebayo, a big breakout candidate in the Eastern Conference for the Miami Heat. A breakout podcast at the moment is Locked On NFL. Former NFL scout Matt Williamson is providing his unique takes across the league with new host Brian Peacock. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL. Follow it on your favorite podcast provider. Let's go to the Charlotte Hornets. Miles Bridges going to be forced into a much larger role this season. Bridges, really, really strong opportunity here for him to be a top 75 guy, ranked again ludicrously on ESPN, 184th, 109th on Yahoo, but I believe his Yahoo ADP has come in recently significantly. I still think he can be a top 75 guy. He can be a triple one type of player. His shooting was excellent last season. I'm not 100% sure I buy all of that high-level two-point finishing, but the opportunities there. He should be a starter at power forward. I imagine he starts over Marvin Williams, along with Batum and Bacon at the 2, 3, and 4 spots. People have to take shots on this team. With Kemba Walker gone, people have to score. He's going to score. He'll rebound a bit. He'll provide some defensive numbers. He'll be relatively efficient. Miles Bridges is going to have a big season this year and take big steps forward in his career and be a really strong breakout candidate for fantasy, a guy that should never be left undrafted and should be considered a pretty comfortable top 100 player. In pretty much all league formats. Really, really like what Miles Bridges' opportunity looks like this season, and I think he's going. And we saw at the end of last season with Bridges, he was forced into that role. He played over Batum at times. I think they'll play alongside each other this time. They just need someone to actually pass and create shots, and that's what Batum can do with Rozier not being the greatest distributor. But over the final 15 games of last season, Miles Bridges was a top 80 player, averaging 10 and 6 with, again, close to that triple one on elite efficiency, 61% two-point shooting as well. Probably not going to stick at that level. That's pretty bloody high, but really, really efficient stuff from Miles Bridges in that little audition as a starter at the end of last season. All right. All right, now let's look at the next team. We've got the New York Knicks. I think everyone knows who this is going to be, Mitchell Robinson. Now, there is some concern with Mitchell Robinson. I've mentioned this on many different podcasts, but I should continue to smash this into your heads. Is that Mitchell Robinson, there is a risk. Now, Yahoo's got him ranked at 26th. That's pretty aggressive. It's not far off where he can be. On ESPN, of course, it's nonsense. 118 ADP, 106 rank. Fantrax an ADP of 73. Robinson is a guy that can come out and pretty comfortably lead the league in blocks this season, and that has value in itself. How will the minutes go? What will Fizdale do? No, almost undoubtedly screw it up, but he needs to be looking at Randall and Robinson as that front court to develop and play the most minutes. Now, Robinson got into a lot of foul trouble last season. That limited him, but over the end of last season, he did start to get that figured out, and over his final, 8 games, 31, 37, 33, 34, 28, 38, 35, and 23 minutes. That's really impressive stuff. Kept his fouls under control, had some big games there, multiple blocks in all of those games apart from the last one, but he did see his block rate decline during that time, and that's important to note. That is, over the course of the season, he blocked 4.3 shots per 36 minutes, but over the final stretch of games, just 3.5 as he saw his minutes rise, and that happens a lot with players. So I don't think we should be looking at Robinson as putting up the same block level that he did last season just because of staying on the court means you'd be less aggressive. There are other players there to grab rebounds, like Randall, other players to take shots, like everyone else they signed, but Robinson is still going to be valuable, still going to establish himself, and he should establish himself as the clear option there at center. But again, clear options and Fizdale, those two things don't always go together, but I do think that Mitchell Robinson is a prime candidate to be a breakout player, and it is absolutely ridiculous that he fell to the second. I was looking through some old mock drafts for the 2018 draft from like April and February 2018. And Robinson was being mocked in many places at pick 15, which would have made sense and probably would be much higher than that now. But the fact that he fell down to 41 seems absolutely ridiculous to me. Let's go on to the next side of things. We're looking at the Orlando Magic. You know who it's going to be. You know who my favorite Magic player is. It is John Isaac of those Orlando Magic. He's slotted into the starting small forward role last season. Yes, the chief Al-Farouq Aminu is there.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes
But
may be shit.
Aminu is not coming in to take minutes away from Isaac. Isaac is good. He is very good. He probably should be playing center, to be honest, but they're playing him at small forward. He was the 125th ranked player last year in 27 minutes a night. He averaged 1.3 blocks and 0.8 steals, and that 0.8 steals is actually a massive reduction on what he did as a rookie season. He halved his steal rate. He'd been a high steal rate guy at Florida State, high steal rate guy in his rookie season, and it dropped last season. I think it will bounce back. I think his minutes will go up. I think his scoring, his usage, and his efficiency will all rise in his third year. He is a key piece on this team. To me, he is their number one best prospect. Better than Fultz, better than Bumba, better than Aaron Gordon. I think that John Isaac has the ability to be a real impact guy. Offensively, I'm not sure he's ever going to be a 25 usage player, so that probably takes a little bit of his value away, but I think he can be a triple 1.5 guy. I think if we're ever going to have a triple 2 player, it's probably going to be Isaac. He won't do that most likely, but if there's ever going to be someone, and by triple 2 I mean hits 2 threes a game, gets 2 steals a game, and gets 2 blocks per game, I think that he is a player, the player who probably has the best chance of doing that. He won't do it, but he probably has the chance of that. I think he's a clear top 100 guy for this season. He's ranked pretty nicely on Yahoo at 79th, ADP 94 on Fantrax, and of course ESPN 165th. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So he's going to be 40 spots worse than what he was last year. Of course, the common sense of those rankings continues to elude me. So Johnny Isaac, I think, is a big breakout guy, third-year player, second full season, more confidence, looked great in the Team USA Select workouts, and I think he's going to be putting up some interesting numbers. And if those still numbers come back up, man, the top 50 is absolutely within reach for Big John Isaac. Let's look at the Brooklyn Nets here. I think we have to go with Karis LeVert, and Karis LeVert provides an interesting guy. We know how good he was last year before that ankle injury absolutely rooted his season, putting up big numbers, and he was undoubtedly the best player on this Nets team before that injury hit. Yes, D'Angelo Russell was that guy by the end of the season. But to begin the year, LeVert had 27-4-4, 28-6-5, 19-4-3, 10-6-4, 21-6-4, 23-3-7, another stretch of 3 20-point games, and then fractured his ankle. It wasn't great from Karras at all to have that injury, but he was putting up big numbers. Now, Kyrie Irving coming in takes a bit of the shine off LeVert, but he's still going to be the second option on this team. I think he's a pretty comfortable top 100 player for this season. You can get him outside the top 100 on ESPN. He's ranked about right on Yahoo. Get some 20 spots value, I think, from him on Fantrax. But this is an interesting one with LeVert. I think this is going to be his best season. But I also think in a dynasty format, once he starts out hot this year, trading him away is probably worth looking at because Kevin Durant comes back. And yes, they will start Irving, LeVert, Durant. That will be the starters. He'll be a restricted free agent, but they'll bring him back. And then you think, is this the best situation that LeVert will be in? Maybe for the next 2 years, he'll actually have a dip. And then that's where you'd sell him off midway through this season if you're in that situation to do it. See him maybe have a worse year for the next 2 years. And then that makes him a buy low because then, of course, things change. Players get moved. Durant retires. Whatever ends up, he probably doesn't retire, but a lot drops off with him. So it's about maximizing that value on LeVert. So I think LeVert will have a big year this year, breakout. Probably drop off the next season, next 2 seasons, and then come back up. And I think his peak overall is probably going to be a top 50 player at some point in his career. It's just going to be a bit of a rocky road in order for him to get there with the way that this Nets roster is structured in particular. Let's go to the next team. Now we're looking at the Indiana Pacers and their breakout player. You can all guess who it is. It's Domantas Sabonis, who now projects to be their starting power forward. He was a real revelation last season in discussion for 6th man of the year. Obviously, that ended up going to Lou Williams. But Domantas Sabonis now moves into the starting power forward spot. Now, I don't like him starting at power forward next to Miles Turner. To me, he's a center. But what they will do is they'll probably play Sabonis as the center, Turner out at power forward. It still has some concerns with perimeter defense. Last season, in 25 minutes a night, he averaged 14 and 9. Now, the defensive numbers are piss poor. 0.4 blocks, 0.7 steals. But it's the efficiency which really was great. 59% shooting. Now, we do have to remember that as a rookie, he shot 39.9%. A second-year player, 51. So he had a 7.5 percentage point jump in his field goal percentage. So there is some concern that maybe it doesn't stick at that 59% level. The other thing we have to look at is when you go from the guy on the second unit that's taking every shot in the world to fitting in that starting unit alongside Victor Oladipo when he returns. Miles Turner, TJ Warren's not shy to take a shot. Malcolm Brogdon. Will Sabonis post at 24-25% usage, or will it come down to 22-23? They are the concerns we have, along with my concern with maybe a drop in efficiency. And his free throws over the second half of the season were bad. 64% from the line over his final 34 games. And that meant, and he finished last year as the 83rd ranked player. But over the final 3 months of the year, 153rd. That is worth mentioning, as that efficiency dropped off and the free throws dropped off. His true shooting went from 63 down to 58, and that caused a big drop in his overall value. Plus, his already anemic steal and block numbers got worse during that time. So there is some concern. I think there is a risk of him. People think, automatically he's going to be a top 40 guy on ESPN. They think that for some reason. They've got him ranked 36th. I think the Yahoo ranking of 83rd and Fantrax ADP of 79 is about the right spot. You're not just, much like Will Barton last year, a guy that thrives in a bench role. If you put him into a starting role, it doesn't mean that everything just carries over. There's got to be some adjustment there, and I think that's going to happen with Sabonis, but I still think from an overall perspective, this is going to be his best NBA season. Let's look at the Detroit Pistons breakout player. I am going with the Duck, Luke Kennard. Now, I don't know how Dwayne Casey is going to handle Kennard. I think that we're going to have the Shark, Bruce Brown.
Baby shark,
I think that he'll start at the 2. You have Reggie Jackson at the 1. I think they're probably going to go with Tony Snell at the 3, which is pretty unfortunate for anyone who likes good basketball. But Kennard is going to be that second unit guy along with Derrick Rose, playing the 2, playing the 3, playing close to 30 minutes. He should play more minutes than Snell and probably more minutes than Brown also. I really think that we can get an opportunity here to see what Kennard can do as a guy that can shoot threes, who can score, who can handle the ball a bit, who can play some defense, although his defensive stats are fairly bad. But we saw from him in the playoffs where he started 2 of the games, 21-4-2, 19-4-2, 9-7, and then 11-1-1. He played 35, 38, and 33 minutes across those final 3 games. There is some step up. Now, is he a standard league guy? Probably not. Probably on the fringes of that. In a 14-team league, I'm really in on Kennard. I think he's going to have a solid role. I think as a third-year guy, he is going to take that big step forward that we hope that so many of these guys do. And I think this situation is breaking right for him to do that for this season. Let's look at the Toronto Raptors. There was plenty of options here. I could have gone with the Jedi.
Hello there.
OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, you could have listed as that guy. I think people might be getting a little bit over the top on Siakam and thinking he's going to be a second-round guy. His defensive numbers were pretty poor last season. Can he keep up that high efficiency with an increased usage? He will have an increased usage. He will probably be a 20-point-per-game scorer, but there are people who might consider him a second-round guy. I am not one of those people. I think the ADP and ranks on all sites is probably about the right spot. End of the 3rd, start of the 4th round for Siakam. But I'm not talking about him. The Jedi, OG Anunoby's fine as a last-round flyer. So is Storm and Norman Powell. But the guy I want to talk about here is Freddie VanVleet, who I think is a pretty clear top 100 player. You can still get some value on him in drafts, regardless of what site you're on. But I think this is going to be his best season. With both Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard gone, VanVleet's going to take on a larger role. I don't think they're going to start VanVleet. I think he's going to come off the bench, but I think he's going to play 30-plus minutes. And over the final 13 games of last season, he played 30 minutes. He was the 85th best player. There's no reason to me that he can't be at least that level or better. It's going to come down to what his shooting's like. It struggled for big chunks of last season, the 2-point shooting, not the threes. They were strong. And can he start to generate steals? I think his assist will go up. I think his scoring will go up. I think his 3-pointers will go up. To me, he is a must-draft fantasy guy. He's going to be playing 30 minutes a night. He's going to work himself into a nice payday, not a contract year performance, because it's all about opportunity, not necessarily about when your contract's up, but the opportunity there is for VanVleet, and he's bloody good. So we're going to see big steps forward from Fred this season, and to me, he's a pretty comfortable top 100 draft pick in fantasy leagues. Let's go on to the last team now in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Wizards. We have to go with Tommy Bryant here. Didn't like the way that Scotty Brooks handled him last season, really limited minutes, but there's very few other options here. Is Brooks going to run with 25 minutes of Jan Mahinmi? If he does, he won't have a job past November. So Bryant is going to get more minutes. They just paid him for this coming season. I think he's a 30-minute-a-game guy who can be a double-double player, who can block shots, who can hit threes, who can hit free throws efficiently, and who can score really efficiently. His best category is going to be a field goal percentage, but he's also going to be a player that contributes in multiple areas. I think we're going to see by far the best season of Tom Bryant's career. Of course, on ESPN, he's completely ranked out of the arse. 98 ADP on Fantrax is ludicrous as well. There's a lot of value there. 58 rank on Yahoo. That's about the right spot, and he's in that area with Bam Adebayo. As someone asked me yesterday, who rank these guys: Mitch Robinson, Bam Adebayo, and Tom Bryant. And just a quick thing, when you ask me rank these guys, it's not really how fantasy basketball works, unless we're talking about the start of a draft in the first round. It's all about what have you done previously, what are your league settings, what's your team look like, because in general, when you look at overall ranks, Robinson probably comes out ahead of Bam, but for some teams, he'd be significantly worse of an option because he's probably going to crater that team's free throw percentage, or what do you want to do with your blocks? Are you looking at that category? Like, there are many different things that do go into it. It's never just a straight rank these guys. So Bryant is in that mix, in that 4th to 5th round sort of scenario, third to 5th, but you wouldn't want to take Bryant in the 3rd, more 4th to 5th round type of a center player in that mix. Jaren Jackson's in there, Derek Favors is in there, Bam Adebayo's in there, Larry Markkinen, LaMarcus Aldridge, Blakey Griffin, all these players, Julius Randle in this mix there, depending on who you want. Now, obviously, there's big differences between someone like Julius Randle and someone like Larry Markkinen, one of them with high field goal percentage, one of them with high threes. There's differences. Same with Tom Bryant, more blocks than these players. They play the same position, but what they provide is very different, and that is very important to know. It's not about draft, because if everything was just about drafting off a ranking list, you just set your ranking list, hit auto draft, and go drink a beer in the shower or something, and you wouldn't have to pay attention to your draft. But that's not how drafting works. It's not how fantasy drafts work. That's not how fantasy drafts are won. It's about really monitoring what each player is doing and how that fits with your team, and with the scarcity of that stat in your league, and who's been picked beforehand and where runs have gone. There's so much nuance to it. And of course, I'm going to be doing tons of mock drafts on this channel throughout the preseason, so you can see me try and navigate that as the season goes on. But back to the point, Breakout, Tom Bryant of the Washington Wizards. That'll wrap it up for today's show. Tomorrow's show, we're going to be looking at breakout candidates in the Western Conference, and lots of opportunities over there as well for guys to have better seasons that they've had at any point in their career. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball, Instagram, Locked On Fantasy Basketball. follow the Locked On Podcast Network. You want to hear about the Wizards and Tom Bryant? Go listen to Locked On Wizards with Troy Halliburton, new host over there on Locked On Wizards. Go check him out right across the network. Great host, providing great content all the time. Go and check them out. Subscribe to this podcast on YouTube. If you hit that little subscribe button, where is it? Down below there. Hit that, it'd be great. Give it a thumbs up. Tell your friends. Again, get in the league. Beat people who know what they're doing, not spuds who don't know the difference between Spud Webb and Muggsy Bogues. Shout out to those of you who are too old to know who those players are. Too young to know who those players are. Sorry. I'm rambling. Let's go. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Evan Turner.